I'm going to show you a crunching encounter between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and the world number 3 Ding Liren, played in the online Chess Legends tournament. So Carlsen with the white pieces here. This is game 2. Game 1 was drawn, pretty solid. And Carlsen with white playing in, well, a very orthodox way, a very standard position. Bishop g5, so it's a semi-Slav. And Ding plays h6, attacking the bishop. Now, if white wants to play solidly here, then you can simply exchange here. And, well, this is a very well-known position, but generally it's more strategic. But Carlsen played bishop h4, and this leads to really sharp positions. This is the so-called anti-Moscow variation. And it involves a gambit, and it looked like Magnus was in a big hurry today. The players were playing the round early, or earlier than the other players, because Magnus Carlsen wanted to watch the English Premier League. It's the last day of the football season here in England. And Magnus is riding high in the fantasy league, and he even had a chance to win, which is extraordinary. I mean, there are millions of people that take part in that. So, yeah, his eye was on a quick victory. So, pawn takes pawn from Ding. Pawn to e4. So you want to play bishop takes pawn. g5. Now this breaks the pin. And Magnus now Ding protects the pawn with b5. So this is the gambit, a well-known gambit. Bishop e2, bishop b7, castles from Carlsen, and knight d7. So it reminds me a little bit of the King's Gambit, actually, except sort of mirrored down the middle. Instead of a pawn on f4 protected, it's a pawn on c4 that's protected. So I mean, obviously white has a nice centre here. But this is a very nice clump of pawns. But I think, apart from the centre, black's big problem in this position is the king. You can see it doesn't really have a very safe refuge on the king's side because black has already advanced with h6 and g5. If it goes to the queen's side, well, those pawns have advanced and it might be possible to break things open with a4 or possibly b3. So this is black's dilemma. Extra pawn, but got to take care with your king, whereas white's king is, of course, much safer. Now, in the overwhelming majority of games played from this position, white plays knight e5. And Ding, as black, had an extraordinary game in the Berlin Candidates in 2018 against Grishuk after knight e5. But that's the most popular move by far. Carlsen played knight d2. And according to my database, this has only been played on 2 previous occasions. So already Ding would have been thrown onto his own resources. I mean, quite an unusual move, a retreat. Doesn't look very natural. There is a good point to it, as we're about to see. But this is more evidence that, you know, Magnus keeps coming up with these little unusual opening ideas to try and wrong foot his opponents. Very typical of him. So Ding played queen b6. Logical to attack the pawn on d4, potentially to give himself the option of castling queenside. So Carlsen plays a4. So that just gives a little bit of pressure against the pawn on b5, and you never know when it might be possible to open up the a file to white's advantage, and also introduces the possibility of pawn to a5 to nudge the queen out of the way, and you never know, pawn to a6. Therefore, Ding plays pawn to a6, which bolsters the b pawn, And yeah, it guards against this idea of pushing the pawn all the way down to a6. So now e5 from Carlsen, attacking the knight, which came into d5, and now knight e4. So this is, now we see the pretty basic idea behind this knight d2 move. White simply goes e5 and the knight follows up and looks at these squares. Now, all those squares are covered at the moment, but still, there is potential there. The other thing about playing the knight from d2 is that it opens up this diagonal, could be useful for the bishop. And also, you never know when the good old f pawn might be launched to open up the f file. But in playing like this with pawn to e5, of course, you give black a very nice square on d5. So you give something, you get something. Previously, Castle's queenside has been seen in this position, but Ding decided not to commit the king. He played c5. Now, that is very, very risky to open the position with the king still in the middle. And also, yeah, means b5 is a little bit more vulnerable as well. Carlsen exchanged knights in the middle. And now dropped the knight back to c3. That's a very interesting idea. So he's just saying good morning to the bishop. And if the bishop drops back, then you can push forward with d5 and you're already breaking through the middle. This is very nasty indeed. Threatening potentially to take here and then bishop g4 or bishop h5. And if b4, then this move a5 really comes in handy. And then we take on e6 and bishop h5 check. Well, you can see the king would be displaced, and that is pretty horrible. So very interesting idea, knight c3. Ding took on d4. Knight takes bishop. Pawn takes. So black has taken another pawn. Black is 2 pawns up now. But you can see once that light squared bishop has disappeared from the board, then this one potentially turns into a monster, and there are lots of weak white square diagonals here that could be very interesting for white. Bishop h5 from Carlsen. So now things starting to look pretty serious for the king. And indeed, Ding actually blunders here. I think the thing with this position is it's just much easier for white to play than black, basically. You know, if the king goes to the queen side, that looks very uncomfortable because the a file will open. You know, that pawn will drop. This diagonal could be weak as well. This one too. And don't forget that bishop on g3 would also come into play too. Bishop e7 is the best move. Even then, there are 2 interesting ideas. f4 or indeed e6 is also possible, just opening things up. And, well, white has tremendous compensation there. But knight c5 played by Ding, obviously trying to keep some control over e6. But queen takes d4 was very powerful. Threatening, well, one thing is he's threatening to take on d5, and the other, of course, is that you want to play e6 to open up this diagonal, so that's pretty nasty as well. Therefore, Ding tried to keep a lid on it with queen e6, but bishop g4 was painful. So if the queen moves again, there's going to be e6, so knight b3. Attacks the queen. Well, if bishop takes queen, knight takes, then that's not so clever for white. Well, even that's possible. But no, not so great. But Carlsen instead moves the queen. Queen d1. So that keeps hold of the bishop on g4. Black's queen attacked, so has to go to the side. Now, a takes b5. Of course, you want to try and open things up. And in this position, if a takes b5, then you can exchange and go e6, and you can see the king is just being ripped apart here. So Ding played queen takes b5, e6 anyway, pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn. Now white has so many threats here. Queen h5 check, a subtle rook e1. There's also queen f3, so queen threatening to come out to one of these. There's also bishop e5. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. Ding played rook a7 to guard some squares along the 7th rank. Bishop takes d5. Just very simple, actually, opening up the position. So Ding took the rook on a1. And now with his next move, Carlsen forced resignation. He played queen f3 and Ding resigned. It really is hopeless. So first of all, let's see why he resigned. Bishop c6 check, threatened winning the queen. That's serious enough. So let's say queen c5. Well, then rook e1 check. If rook e7, we could play bishop c6, king here, rook d1 check. The king can't step onto this square because of the bishop. Let's say king here. And we'll go queen g4 check. That king can't cross through those bishops, can't cross through here. Let's finish with a checkmate. And queen takes rook, and that is mate. Absolutely devastating. As I said, Magnus in a real hurry, wanted to watch some football. But seriously, I just think it's so interesting that he has this whole arsenal of clever little opening ideas. Knight d2 that just completely wrong-footed Ding. Here, white just has this superb initiative, and it is very powerful initiative. It's very hard to defend against it. Magnus drew the next 2 games very comfortably. Well, one, he had to hold a queen and pawn endgame, but yeah, managed to do that reasonably comfortably. And in the 4th game, he was, well, probably even winning that one, but forced a draw. So Magnus won the mini match of 4 games pretty comfortably after this spectacular win. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting us on PayPal or Patreon. Thanks for watching.